6 separate reports described the same thing. A sump pump that was smoking. Not failing, not flooding the basement. Smoking. In February of 2020, the Consumer Product Safety Commission announced a recall of roughly 33,000 pedestal sump pumps because they could overheat and pose a fire hazard. Here's the part that should stop you cold. It was not 33,000 pumps from one company. It was one pump, built in one factory in China, sold under 3 different American brand names: Utilitech at Lowe's, Do It Best at the local hardware co-op, and Star Water Systems. Same machine, same defect, 3 labels, and every buyer thought they had bought a different product. This video is about the sump pumps that should never go in your basement and the 3 brands actually worth your money. A sump pump is the least glamorous machine you will ever own, and the only one standing between a finished basement and a total loss. It sits in a pit in your floor. It runs when you are asleep. Nobody checks it, and when it fails on the worst night of the year, during the storm, when the power is out and the water table is rising. The numbers here are not small. According to the Insurance Information Institute, using industry data from 2019 through 2023, 1 in every 67 insured homeowners filed a water damage or freezing claim each year, with an average claim of $15,400. That is the second most common homeowners claim in America, behind only wind and hail. The Federal Emergency Management Agency puts it more bluntly. Just 1 inch of water in a typical home can cause up to $25,000 in damage. And here is what almost nobody knows until the adjuster is standing in their basement. A standard homeowner's policy does not cover sump pump failure. You need a separate water backup endorsement, which runs somewhere between $30 and $250 a year, and even then, it typically covers the damage the water did, not the pump that let it in. It gets thinner still. Insurers can deny a water claim for poor maintenance, and Weiss Ratings found that in 2023, 37.4% of all homeowner claims were closed without any payment at all. Among the 13 largest insurers, that number reached 47.5%. So the machine matters, and the industry selling it to you has spent decades making the differences invisible. If this is the kind of thing nobody tells you in the plumbing aisle, subscribe, because this is what every video on this channel does. Start with the recall record, because that is the part nobody can argue with. It is not a review. It is a federal filing. Go back to 1978. The Consumer Product Safety Commission announced a recall of about 5,600 pedestal sump pumps over a shock hazard from a plastic float switch mounted on top of the motor. 3 model numbers, 8 brand names: Agway, American Jetstream, Hydrolux, Menards, Superflow, True Value, Wayne, and Wheatbelt. 8 different names on a hardware store shelf, 3 actual products underneath. That was almost 50 years ago, and the playbook has not changed since. In the year 2000, Stallwright recalled about 29,000 battery chargers used in Flowtech and Sears backup sump pump systems. The stated reason was that the chargers could overheat and ignite. There were 7 reports of chargers overheating or catching fire, and 4 of those involved smoke or fire damage to the home. Think about that for a second. The device people install specifically so their basement stays dry during a power outage was the device setting the house on fire. In 2011, ITT Water Technology recalled roughly 21,000 pumps sold under the Gould's, Red Jacket, and Bell & Gossett names over a shock and electrocution hazard. If the cord was fully submerged without ground fault protection, water could reach the receptacle. The Commission's warning told consumers not to touch the pump, not to touch the water, and not to touch the floor. And as recently as April of 2023, Moen recalled about 10,000 lithium-ion battery backup units for its smart water monitor over a fire hazard, after 3 reports of overheating or fire. 5 recalls, 5 decades, and a pattern you can set your watch by: cheap components, imported manufacturing, and a hazard that shows up as heat. And notice something about those brand names, because the shelf is far emptier than it looks. Flowtech, Cymer, Stay Right, Hydromatic, and Myers are all Pentair brands. Red Lion belongs to Franklin Electric. Wayne sits under Scott Fetzer, under Marmon Holdings, owned by Berkshire Hathaway. You walk down an aisle that looks like 8 companies competing for your business. It is 3 or 4 corporations wearing 8 hats. In fairness, this cuts both ways. Zoller had a recall of its own in 2007 over a grounding fault in a plug made in the Philippines on models overlapping its residential line. That was a plug problem, not a build problem, but you deserve to hear it. But here's the thing. Recalls are the rare case. The failure's so dangerous a federal agency stepped in. Most pumps that fail in this country never get recalled at all because they are not defective. They are just built to a price. That is the bigger problem. Ask a plumber what actually kills sump pumps and you will not hear about motors. You will hear about a switch. Arthur Harris Plumbing states it flatly. The leading mechanical cause of sump pump problems is a switch problem. Here is why. Cheap pumps use what is called a tethered float, a bulb on a cord that swings up as the water rises. It works fine on a bench. In a real pit, the pump vibrates every time it runs, and it slowly walks across the bottom of the basin until that float wedges against the wall or tangles in its own power cord. Now it either never turns on or never turns off. Both outcomes end the same way. A better pump uses a vertical float that travels straight up a rod or a solid-state pressure switch with no moving float at all. That single design choice is worth more than any horsepower number on the box. And these are not exotic failures. They are stupid ones. The licensed plumbing firm Total Mechanical Care estimates that roughly 60% of sump pump failures come down to a tripped breaker, an unplugged cord, or a stuck float. Things a homeowner could fix in 30 minutes if anyone had told them to look. Nobody looks. The pump gets checked exactly once, on the day the carpet is already soaked. There is also a myth worth killing, which is that a bigger pump is a safer pump. It is not. Oversizing is actively harmful because a pump too powerful for the pit empties it in seconds, shuts off, refills, and starts again. You size a pump to the water coming in, not to how nervous you feel in the store. Then there is the housing, and this is where the cost-cutting shows. A cheap pump is thermoplastic. A serious pump is cast iron. This is not about toughness, it is about heat. Cast iron pulls motor heat out into the water and dumps it. Thermoplastic traps it. Trade sources consistently put a cheap thermoplastic pump at 5 to 10 years, and quality cast iron at 15 or more, with some running past 30. Now the marketing lie. Horsepower. Horsepower tells you about the motor. It tells you nothing about water. The only number that matters is gallons per hour at the actual height the water has to climb, which in most houses is around 10 feet, and manufacturers know exactly how to hide that. The Basement Health Association says it directly, warning that some manufacturers try to trick homeowners and contractors alike by rating their pumps at 0 head, which sounds impressive but does not mean much in a real application. A pump advertised at 2,400 gallons an hour at 0 lift may deliver 1,500 at 10 feet. Same box. Same sticker. More than a third of the water gone. Wait, it gets worse because the backup systems are the same trick with a battery attached. Battery backup pumps are sold on runtime. 60 hours of protection, except Home Depot reviewers flagged one listing where the 60-hour rating came with the battery not included, a detail buried below a headline number. The direct current pump in most of these kits carries roughly a quarter of the pumping capacity of a 1/3 horsepower primary. The runtime and flow figures are quoted at 0 lift again, so a unit rated 2,000 gallons an hour at 0 feet drops to 1,000 at 10 feet. And owners report chargers that overcook the battery, with failures at 13 and 16 months, which is a remarkable coincidence given how many warranties run 12 months. And the quietest killer is not the pump at all. It is a $15 part. Without a working check valve on the discharge line, every gallon standing in that vertical pipe falls back into the pit the second the pump shuts off. The pit refills. The pump restarts. All night, until the motor cooks itself. Plumbers call it short cycling, and many pumps that die young were never defective. They were installed wrong. So here is the actual avoid list, and it is not a list of names. It is a list of features because the names change every few years and the shortcuts do not. Avoid any pedestal pump with a plastic float switch sitting on top of the motor, the exact design pulled from shelves in 1978. Avoid thermoplastic on a pump that cycles often. Avoid any box advertising horsepower that will not publish gallons per hour at 10 feet. Avoid any backup system selling a runtime number without saying whether a battery is in the carton. And avoid a 1-year warranty, because that is the manufacturer telling you in writing how long it expects the thing to survive. So who actually builds a pump worth owning? The first is Zoller, in Louisville, Kentucky, family owned since 1939, made in the United States with a majority of American content and factory tested before it ships. The pump to know is the M53, the Mighty Mate. Cast iron body, cast iron switch case, cast iron motor housing, an oil-filled sealed motor, and a vertical float, around $185, backed by a 3-year warranty. Plumbers have installed this pump in their own basements for decades, and it is still the benchmark everything else gets measured against. The second is Liberty Pumps in Bergen, New York, founded in 1965, family and employee owned, with over 90% of its products made in the United States. Cast iron construction, and the company markets its 3-year warranty as industry-leading specifically because most competitors offer only one. That warranty length is the tell. A company does not triple its exposure unless it knows what comes back. The third is Little Giant, now part of Franklin Electric based in Indiana. Cast iron, heavy-duty motors, 3-year coverage, and a decades-long run as a professional standard. And there is a fourth name worth knowing, with one condition attached. The Wayne CDU 980E is the exception inside a brand that also sells budget imports. Assembled in the United States, cast iron and stainless, John Crane carbon and ceramic shaft seals, and a 5-year warranty. Buy that model specifically, not the name on the shelf. Now the last thing, and it ties the whole story together, there is a rumor all over the internet that Everbuilt, the Home Depot house brand, is secretly a rebadged Wayne or Zoller. It is not true. Everbuilt is a Home Depot trademark, engineered and marketed through Ashland Water Group and EcoFlow products of Ashland, Ohio, and the pumps are built in China. That rumor exists for one reason. Buyers want to believe the cheap pump is the expensive pump wearing a different sticker. Sometimes it is. In 2020, 3 brands really were one pump. But you do not get to guess which time is which. Standing in an aisle holding a box that only tells you horsepower. Kentucky Iron, New York Castings, Indiana Motors. The recall notices are public, the warranty terms are printed, and the flow rate at 10 feet is on the spec sheet if the manufacturer is willing to publish it. That last part tells you almost everything. Zoller, for the pump you install once. Liberty for the one you never think about again. Little Giant for the plumber's answer. And a check valve on the discharge line, because the best pump in America still drowns in a bad installation. Here is the part that stays with me. Every one of these failures was known in advance. The switch design that jams was documented in a federal recall almost 50 years ago. The heat problem with thermoplastic is basic physics. The horsepower number has been misleading buyers for as long as the box has existed. None of it is secret. It is just quiet, because nobody sells a story about the basement that did not flood. So go downstairs this week and pour a bucket of water into the pit. If the pump kicks on, shuts off cleanly, and the water does not fall straight back in, you are fine. If nothing happens, you just found out on a Tuesday afternoon instead of at 2 in the morning in a storm with the power out. Test it before the storm, not during it. If this saved you a basement, subscribe, and I will keep pulling these apart.